Our next topic basically is the successful managing the change with Brian Payne. Brian is partner, talent, organization performance practice lead for North American Smart Grid at Accenture. And so, Brian?
Thank you, John. Good morning and afternoon, everyone. I just want to echo the comments that the other panelists have made today, which is to thank you all very much for joining us in letting us share our experiences around how to effectively manage the workforce implications of smart grid opportunities or smart grid initiatives. A couple of points that I heard in Susan and Bernie's presentation, I just wanted to echo as I start out here about how do you successfully manage through that change. The first point was Bernie referred to utility initiatives in the past, and oftentimes you talk in terms of transactional versus transformational change. I agree wholeheartedly with Bernie that smart grid opportunities offer one of the most robust opportunities for true transformational change in how the utility operates in the relationships with your customers and in how you manage and motivate your workforce as well. The other thing I wanted to highlight, Susan brought up the point around the publicity in the marketplace, the stimulus funding, regulatory filings. There's just a lot of visibility and scrutiny around smart grid opportunities these days as well. And so one of the things we'll talk about is how do you successfully manage through that as well. And then finally, we talked about the different starting points or the different flavors of smart grid initiatives. And they do come in those smart metering, smart grid, and beyond the meter types of initiatives. I would also highlight that in many cases, most of those of you here on the phone today are probably looking at those three, and you see in your own initiatives flavors of all three of those swim lanes, and that is absolutely what we're seeing as well. Many of the initiatives that have been launched in the marketplace are hybrids of all three. You are experimenting with smart metering, some smart grid, and then looking at how to expand your relationship with the customer through your in-home network as well. So with that, in this section, what we wanted to do is actually take a moment and actually talk about how do you successfully manage those implications based on the desired business outcomes that you have defined for your smart grid initiatives. And so what we're going to talk about is the 7 key levers that you would actually use to help manage that organizational change. And for those of you that have gone through other transformational change initiatives within your own organizations, I'm sure many of these components sound very familiar to you. What I would say is what we are seeing in the marketplace right now around smart grid is that although the levers themselves may sound familiar, it is so critical to have the detailed and very specific context and content around each one of these levers to specifically align your organization around the desired business outcomes associated with your specific initiatives. So what I want to do today is just hit on the 7 distinct but interrelated components, and then I'm going to go through a deep dive into 3 of these, those 3 being leadership, stakeholder management, and talent management, and how do you effectively, and what are we seeing in the marketplace, and how you manage through those specific levers. So with that, just on this slide, I want to hit through the 7. The first is absolutely leadership. And when we talk about leadership around smart grid initiatives, it is about leadership alignment around those desired business outcomes. It's about leadership engagement, about engaging your leadership to actually lead the organization toward those business outcomes. And when you're talking about smart grid initiatives, that leadership goes hand in hand in making sure that leadership understands those business outcomes. They understand the actions and sponsorship activities that they need to take in order to lead the organization effectively. And that actually leads us directly into the third component of leadership that I would say would be leadership development. So it's leadership alignment, engagement, and development to make sure that your leaders feel not only informed but also empowered to lead the organization to those outcomes. The second point is culture. Hitting on culture, and Susan mentioned this quite a bit as we talked through the individual implications of the smart grid initiatives. It is a significant culture shift for a utility to shift from a traditional operating model where energy efficiency was not core to your business. Within most of your smart grid initiatives, energy efficiency and conservation has become critical to achieving those business outcomes. So how do you shift your culture in such a way that when you do encounter someone in the grocery store, to use Susan's example, that employee is very comfortable and confident in having that conversation with your customers around energy efficiency and conservation, around the smart grid initiatives and the business outcomes. Stakeholder management. This is not only about internal stakeholder management and understanding your workforce. Because of that visibility, it is absolutely critical to be very proactive in managing both your internal and external stakeholders. And this would range from your regulatory agencies to your legislative bodies, to your labor unions, to your customer advocates, to your internal employees, to your customers, and understanding the different drivers for each of your different customer groups. Communications. Communications, once again, both internal and external communications, and making sure that you are educating both your customer base and your employees around the initiatives and the outcomes that you want to achieve. Organization design and alignment. This is absolutely critical, and one of the most significant changes associated with smart metering and smart grid initiatives is actually the combination of and the creation of a new organization that I'll generically call SMI operations. And the idea is that you are combining components of IT, you are combining components of your telecom group, you are combining components of your meter shop and your meter reading organization, you are combining components of your billing organization, as well as your dispatch and field operations as well. So how do you effectively change those roles and responsibilities and create a governance around a single organization to manage your smart grid infrastructure once it's been deployed to the field? Talent management. What types of skills and capabilities do you need, and how do those differ from what you currently have today? And then finally, training and transition to operations. Most smart grid initiatives are pursued via a very significant deployment effort that usually includes contracted workforces. It includes vendors. It includes specialty skills that you are bringing in from the outside. So how do you effectively transition responsibility for the operation of that infrastructure and your smart metering or smart grid solutions into your day-to-day operations? And then finally, on the right-hand side of the slide, just want to highlight that this is not a one-time plan, think about it, execute it, and be done with it. This is very much an iterative process where you have to have a mechanism to measure your progress. You have to define and prioritize your initiatives to redirect your organization and reinforce points that need to be reinforced. And then you refine your course of action. And many of these smart grid initiatives are going to be multi-year, and in some cases even multi-decade types of deployment activities. So how do you maintain the momentum and sustain that operation going forward? So moving forward, just want to hit on the 3 points here once again. Leadership, align and develop leaders. I don't think anyone on the call today is going to disagree with any of the bullet points that I have on the slide around what an effective leader should do. I think that where the real information comes from is what we are seeing with leadership specific to our smart grid work that we're doing with multiple clients around the world right now. And it really does indicate that there is a new paradigm in leadership that is going to have to be developed within utilities to fundamentally align, engage, and develop those leaders and to move the organization to this entirely new operating model in some cases.